Okay, Zok the Heilige Gemara. So we're in the middle of a discussion of whether or not simanim are daraisa. So to clarify precisely what our shaila is, a siman muvak, such as there's a hole in the get beside this letter, that's so precise that doesn't even need the psak of the Torah of simanim daraisa. Even if simanim is lav daraisa, we learned that would be a good siman anyway. When it comes to finding a Metzia, returning an Aveda with simanim, even if it's not daraisa, we said that there's a svara midrabana to suggest that simanim you'd give back something with simanim, because even the person who lost it is happy that the person who finds it should release it with simanim, even if it's possible that it belongs to somebody else, and he'll lose it. Why? Because he knows that he doesn't have Adam. So his only chance of retrieving his lost article is through simanim. So he's happy to allow an Aveda to be released to the claimer with a siman. So that's where we're holding now. That there's an option to learn that simanim is not a raisa, and by Aveda there's different svaras as to why the owner of the object would be happy that it gets released with siman. But now the Gemara cites a case where that svara wouldn't apply. The elahadikna, we learned this earlier in the Masechah. Matzah tachrich shel shtaris ayagudah shel shtaris. If you found shtaris rolled up, they have different configurations of how they can be rolled up, but you found them rolled up, and that's a siman. The way they're rolled up is in and of itself a siman. Hareza Yasser, you can give it back to the Malva. Now let's think for a second. The svar that we want to use is that I'm happy that I'm happy that the Aveda should be given back with simanim so that I can get it. Here you can't say that. Of course, the loiva does not want the star to go back to the Malva. He wanted to remain lost without a bona fide siman. And therefore, if you hold that simanim is lav daraisa, how would you explain, in this case of Motza Tachrich Shel Shtaris, Gudah Shel Shtaris, how would you explain why you can give it back to the Malva if he could identify how they're bundled up together? So because of that, we've blown the whole svara of simanim lav daraisa out of the water. And in fact, there's no way to explain this Mishnah unless you hold that simanim is daraisa. And therefore, Ella Amar Rava concludes simanim is daraisa. From this Mishnah, we have a raya that simanim are daraisa, because there's no derabanan reason why they would be misakin to give back the shtar. Where do we know in the Torah? Where does the Torah tell us that simanim are daraisa? That's one of the rayas that the Gemara brought earlier, and the Gemara asked over there, it doesn't mean you have to give it back to somebody even before he collects it. Rather, when someone comes to collect it, confirm that he's not a Ramai, check him out, and then you give it back to him if you determine that he's not a Ramai. Lav b'simanim. How else would you determine if he was a Ramai? Obviously, if he has the right simanim, then we could trust him. Then he's not a Ramai, and therefore we can give it back. Yaveda. If not, no, that would be the source in the Torah that simanim are daraisa. Now, we had this right before, and the Gemara diffused it by saying, no, maybe darsheyu im ramayu with Adam. But Rav is saying, since we know simanim are daraisa from the Mishnah of Motza Tachrich, we'll have to learn pshat in darsheyu means with a siman. That will be the source of the halacha that simanim is daraisa. So then Rava continues. Omar Rava, im timtzaloimer simanim daraisa. If you would hold simanim daraisa, and Rava is about to lead into a question, but the Gemara interrupts him. Im timtzaloimer, what do you mean if you say? You just a moment ago concluded hapashidle simanim daraisa. You concluded a minute ago that simanim is daraisa. So if anything, you should have introduced your next shaila by saying, Now that we've determined that Simanim is Deraisa, let's go on to the next Shaila. But you didn't say that. You said if you would hold that Simanim is Deraisa, which makes it sound like you're not so sure about it. Zok to Gemara, the reason why he said into Tzalaimer is Rava wasn't so cocky to say, I concluded that's the way it is. Because the Lamaisa, he acknowledged that in the Gemara, we could have explained the pasuk of Darshayu in Ramai to be referring to Edom. So therefore, Rava is still presenting his Shaila without saying confidently that Simanim is Daraisa. So let's see what his Shaila would be. Simanim v'Simanim. What if two different people came to claim the Aveda and they each offered the same Simanim? Now, we don't know. Should we give it to Reuven or should we give it to Shimon? Allah is Yoniach. Rashi says, the finder has to hold on to this Aveda forever and ever until Elio will come and clarify who is the rightful owner. What about Simanim ve'edim? One person at Simanim, which shows that it's his object, but another one brought Edim, Shimon brought Edim, that saw him drop it. There Yinosin Labala Edim. Surely the Edim trump the Bala Simanim. What about Simonim and Simonim ve'edechad? Reuben had Simonim, Shimon had Simonim, but Shimon also had an Eidechad. The halacha is Eidechad command the lesson. The Eidechad has zero impact here, and it would be the same thing as Simonim v'Simonim v'Yoniach. Once again, this object remains where it is until Eliyahu Novi can come and clarify. How about Eidei Ariga of Eidin Nefila? One Eid said, I saw Reuben weaving this beggar. I saw him make this beggar. So I know it's his. Shimon says, I saw Shimon drop this beggar. So two Eidim said, I saw Reuben make this beggar, and two Eidim came along and said, I saw Shimon drop this beggar. Who do we give it to? We'll give it to Shimon because the Eidim said that he dropped it. Why would we say that? Reuben made it. Normally, yes, it's not normal for someone to make a beggar himself. But in this case, where we have contradictory Eidim, if two Eidim say that he made it, and two Eidim said that someone else dropped it, we would say they're both right. Reuben made it, he sold it to Shimon, and Shimon lost it. How about Midas Arkoy Midas Rach? Someone offered the length of the beggar, and someone offered the width of the beggar. But we need to understand how the begadim worked in those days. A beggar in those days, Rashi explains, was like a big scarf. So the width of the scarf would be the height of his body. So let's say someone is 6 feet tall, and he's going to wear it over his head, and it'll drape down to his knees. So it would be approximately 4.5 feet wide. But the length of the scarf that he wrapped around himself, it could be any length. It's like a vimple on the Sefer Torah. You can go around 10 times, you can go around 5 times. The main identifying factor, of course, is going to be the width, because that will be dependent on the height of the person who this beggar was made for. So what if someone was able to offer Midas Archai, and the other one was offering you this Rachboy, Tinotein Lamidas Archai? The person who knows how long this beggar was, he has more accurate and more sensitive information. Why? The Midas Rachboy, She'ure Kamashayar Law, Kadmach Salamara. I can look at you and see you wearing a beggar without a measuring tape. I can figure out exactly how long it is, because if you're 6 feet, I know it's going to be about 4.5 feet long. Because so it's easy for someone who's not the owner of the beggar to be able to identify its width. But in Midas Arkai, loy mishtarla, there's no way you could know how long this beggar is. So if someone comes with a simon that he knows how long it is, that's much more unique information that not everybody would be privy to. Gewaltig. Zoktimer, what about one person said Midas Arkoi Verachba. One said it's 4.5 feet wide, and it's 20 feet long. The other one said Midas Gamov. I know that if you measure the length and the width and you add them together, it's going to be 24.5. but he couldn't determine how much of that length was the width and how much of that length was the length. So the person who knows that information has more detailed information. Therefore, Yinatein Lemidas Archoi Berachboi, because he's giving us more detailed information. What about Midas Archoi, Umidas Rachboi, Umidas Mishkaloisov? One gave us its dimensions in length and width, and the other one said, I'll tell you how much this beged weighs. Now, it's highly unlikely for anyone to know how much a beged weighs unless it's his. So therefore, Yinatein Lemidas Mishkaloisov. Now we're going to get into get. There's a get found on the floor. The woman claims, I dropped it and I'm a divorced woman. I can marry anybody that I want. He says, no, I wrote the get and I had intended to give it to you, but I didn't give it to you yet and I dropped it. Excuse me. Dr. Gemara. Who Aimer Simone get? The Aimer Simone get. The law is Yinasei law. We assume that she was the one who dropped it. And we'll get to the exact reason in just a moment. But first the Gemara wants to know what was the simon? B'mai.
What about Adam? What about Adam on the get? So if there's Adam on the get.
Adam on the get don't know that it was given. They just know that the husband wrote it. The Adam on the get don't sign that it was given. There's Eid Chasima. If there were a separate set of Eid Mesira, yes, that would be a good riot. But in this case, we don't have the Eid Mesira. We just have an argument between the husband and the wife who dropped the get.
So we say Eid Mesira Karta.
Not migration. I'm sorry?
You say Eid Mesira Karta.
But if there are Eid Mesira, the problem over here is there are no Eid Mesira here. All we have is a get and some money. So we don't know.
So it's not a get if there's no Eid Mesira. It's not a get.
Maybe there were Eid Mesira. They're just not here. At the time, she claims that the get was given to me with following all the rules. There was Eid Chasima, there was Eid Mesira, whatever the halacha is happened. But she doesn't have them here to verify. So we're talking about verification over here. So she just needs to get us to verify. So we're not discussing the mechanics of how the get happened. Whatever was supposed to happen would have happened if we give her the get. The question is maybe what she's saying is all fabricated, and her husband dropped the get. So Frekmor B'mai, what exactly is the simon that she's giving? If she's giving us the dimensions of the get, that doesn't prove that he ever gave it to her, because she could see that easily without even receiving the get. Dilma b'hadi denoketlei chazizei. She saw him holding it. She was able to see its length and width, and now she can claim that it's hers. So that wouldn't be a good simon anyway. Ella, you know what she said? Nekev yesh boy b'tzad ois ployni. There's a pinhole beside the letter Resh of Reuven. Now, for her to have such detailed information, there's no way she would have that unless she actually received the get. And therefore, we believe her and we give it to her. Now, we need to stop for a moment because the husband also had that same simon. So why does it go to her? So Rashi explains, whether or not she received the get or not, the husband will be privy to that information because he had it at one point. The fact that she knows this information, she knows a detail about it, that proves she must have had it in her hands. Because if she didn't, there's no way she would have ever known this bit of information. We learned back in Bava Kama that sometimes a woman could collect the ksuba with her get. And the Gemara discussed, when the husband pays the ksuba money, why can't he demand that she give him the get so that she won't be able to collect from him again with the same get? So the Gemara answered, because she's going to say, I can't give you this get, because besides the fact that I'm collecting with it, I also need it as proof that I'm divorced, so that I'll be able to remarry. So the Gemara said what Bezdin should do is they should cut it up and then write a note on the get that this is really a good get. This woman is really a free woman. The reason why we tore the get is because we want to prevent her from collecting the ksuba a second time. So that's why she wants this get. That get is her proof that she was in fact migureshes. Zok the Gemara. How about hu omer simonei achut? V'hi omer simonei achut. They don't have a siman on the get itself, but they have a siman on the string that's tied, that ties the get. So the halach is once again, you not tailor. You give it to her. What type of siman are we talking? The color of the string, that doesn't mean anything at all. Does he say? If she merely saw him holding the get, she would have seen the color of the string that's wrapped around it. Ella b'midas arkai. She was able to tell us exactly how long that string is. That's a very, very good siman. Therefore, she will get the get. What about hu omer b'chafisa v'hi omeres b'chafisa? They both say that the get was found in a leather pouch. He gets it. My timer, the women claiming that it was in the leather pouch doesn't show that she has any inside information on this get. Because it made the yada, the choma de isle, every woman knows that whatever her husband has, where does he ship it? In his talis Bible. That's where everyone stores their stuff. The choma de isle, so the fact that she said he had it in his talis Bible doesn't mean anything. Because everything, he keeps all of his stuff in his talis Bible. A talis Bible to a man is like a purse to a woman. They keep all of the treasures in there. So therefore, by her saying it was found in a place where he normally keeps his stuff, doesn't show that she knows anything about this guy. The Baltic. Now the Gemara, now the Mishnah is discussing what burden do we place upon someone who finds an Aveda to find the rightful owner. How much work does he have to do? So Zok the Mishnah, how long does someone have to continue to advertise that this Aveda had been found? Zok the Mishnah, ad kidei sheyedu lo shchein, until the neighbors know. The Gemara is going to explain whose neighbors, what neighbors. Divrei Reb Meir. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, it's much more. It's shalosh regalim. The Riyamim Toivim, when they go to the Oil Regel in Yerushalayim, he has to make announcements that he found something. The Achar regular Achrain, and after the last Yom Tov, Shiva Yomim, an additional 7 days. Why? Because someone is going to hear somebody announce that I found a shirt. So he doesn't know if he lost the shirt or not. So someone who's Oil Regel will get home within 3 days. He has to come back, to go home, he'll check to see if he's missing a shirt. He'll come back to Yerushalayim to claim his Aveda, and then when he arrives, it can take him a day to find the fellow who found his beged and to call out, I lost the beged, who was the one who found it. So therefore you have to wait 7 days after the last jump. Now Reb Moshe Feinstein discusses the responsibility of a person who finds an Aveda. And he says you don't have to spend money advertising this in the publication. You're sicher not mechliv to do that. But you do have to advertise it as best as possible, such as putting up signs in shul, such as if you have a WhatsApp group, such as Reb Moshe says specifically, like posting it by the elevator of a building, because that's where everybody will see it. So you have to publicize it as best as you can, but you don't have to spend money. Zok the Gemara, Tana, what do the neighbors mean? You have to announce it until the neighbors know. Shcheinei Aveda, the neighbors of the Aveda. That doesn't help. Man Shcheinei Aveda. What does it mean, the neighbors of the Aveda? Zok the Gemara, Ilema Shcheinim, the Baal Aveda. If you're telling me that I have to publicize that I found an Aveda in the entire neighborhood of the person who lost it, well, how do you know where his neighborhood is? If you know who he is, if you know who he is, just give it back. So it can't be, you have to publicize it in the neighborhood of the loser, because if you knew who the loser was, then you just give it back to him. Found the Veda in that neighborhood, you have to announce it well enough that all the neighbors in that area would be aware that there was an Aveda found in that neighborhood. Rabbi Yehuda says that how long does it take to get home from being Oil Regel? 3 days. That's why you have to allow 3 days to travel home, 3 days to travel back, and then 1 day to seek it out in Yerushalayim. Frank the Gemara, I'm going to show you that it takes much, much longer for people that came to be Oila Regel to get home. Remino, the Shloshim of Cheshvan, on the third day of Cheshvan, we start saying the same Talmud. It's on the seventh day of Cheshvan that we say the same Talmud, which is Tesvav Yoim Achar Achad. It's 15 days after Sukkot. Why is that important to wait 15 days? So the person who had to travel the furthest to be Oila Regel, all the way from the Euphrates River in Iraq, even he will get home. So you see clearly that people who are going home from Oila Regel can take up to 2 weeks to get home. So based on this, Rabbi Yehuda should have said, you have to wait 4 weeks and 1 day. Rabbi Yosy, it's not fair. Kan b'mikdash rishon, kan b'mikdash shein. Each base of mikdash had different circumstances, and by one it would take longer, by one it would take less. And the Gemara elaborates. In mikdash rishon did Nefishi Yisrael Tuva, but a base of mikdash rishon they were multitudes and multitudes of people. It was a much bigger crowd. It says Yehuda of Yisrael Rabim k'chayil asher hayam l'rayv. So there was a massive, huge amount of people. Therefore, you'd need more time to get home, maybe because of congestion. But the Mikdash Sheni, the Loy Nefishi Yisrael Tuva, where there aren't so many Eden, it was much more sparsely populated. The pasuk says, Kala Kal Ka'echad. If you want to know how much the entire crowd was Arba Ridley, it was 4 times 10,000, so that's 40,000. Alpayim is 2, so 42,000. Shalosh Meis V'Shishim. So it's 42,360 people. Small crowd. They can get on much more quickly. Abaye said, what's the difference how many people there were? That doesn't change where they live. Just because there's less people, it doesn't mean they're crowded around Yerushalayim. Maybe they still live just as far away. But the pasuk says, they all lived in their normal cities. So people were still traveling from Iraq. And therefore, how could Rabbi Yehuda in our Mishnah say you only wait 3 days for them to get home, where we learned a different Mishnah that says it takes 15 days for them to get home? Zok to Gemara, so since you're saying that, I'll say Punk V'Keret. It took much longer to get home during the second base of Mikdash rather than the first base of Mikdash. Mikdash Rishon in Nefishi Yisrael Tuva, where there were many, many Yidden, hundreds of thousands of Yidden were coming to be Oila Regel. The Metzavas Alma, there's a huge mass. If there's a huge mass, then we have the rules of supply and demand. There's going to be a flight every hour on the hour. There'll be a train every hour on the hour. There'll be a bus every hour on the hour. Whenever you want to go, you'll be able to get a ride back. You'll be able to get back much more quickly. 24/7, 24/6, 24/6, every hour on the hour, you have a ride. So therefore, doesn't take so much time to get home. There'll always be an available mode of transportation that you can confirm a reservation on. And therefore, but Mikdash Sheni, the land of Fiji Yisrael Tuva, there weren't so many Eden there. Alma. It's not such a big crowd. And therefore, there was maybe 1 flight a day maximum. And therefore, you don't have masses of transportation going back and forth. You have to find a reservation when you could. And if you don't get on the first flight, you might have to wait another 3 days to get on the next flight. Therefore, it takes 2 weeks to get home. Rav Amar, that's not what it's about. It took the same amount of time to get home from being Oila Regel in the first base of Mikdash as it did in the second base of Mikdash. Loishna b'mikdash rishon, v'loishna b'mikdash sheni, loy hitrichu rabbanon, ba'aved Yosy v'dai. Yes, it takes longer to get home, but how much of a burden, how much of a hassle are you going to place on this person who found Aveda? You can't make him wait 30 days. So therefore, they limited it to 7 days. But you're right; it might have taken some people even longer than that to get home. Amar Rabino, Shemamino, you see from here, ki machris glima machris. When you announce what it is that you found, you don't just say, I found something, and make the person figure out what it is that you found. Rather, you could actually announce what you found. I found a beggar. Why is that? If you just said, I found an Aveda, so you have somebody there in the base of Mikdash who hears somebody announce, I found an Aveda. So he's going to go home. Now, we said 7 days. So he goes home, he sees if he's missing it, and he comes right back. Well, if he knows what he's looking for, yeah, it takes a minute to look. If it was a shirt that was announced as having been found, he'll go into his closet to look at his shirt to see if he's missing anything. But if the person is just announcing, I found an Aveda, so when he comes home, he's going to have to turn the whole house upside down, going through every single one of his possessions to see if anything at all is missing. He would need an extra day. Zok Gemara. The Isol Kedaita Chavedos Macher is Ba'ining Limit for the Chadyoima. You need to give him time to look through all of his items to see if something's missing. And since we don't give him that time, it must be that he knows exactly where he's checking and what he's looking for. So Ravina concludes that the person announcing that he found an Aveda actually tells us what he found. The Gemara is going to come back to this on our base. Even if you're going to say he just announces an Aveda, so then you're going to ask me we should have given him an extra day. Rava says the same svara that he said earlier. Yeah, he might need more time to see what he's missing, but we're still not going to burden the person who found it to wait out. Tanu Rabban, the Rabbanan told us, Regal Rishon Omer Regal Rishon. He's announcing this three Yom Tovim. So by the first Yom Tov he says, this is the first Yom Tov that I'm announcing. Regal Sheni Omer Regal Sheni. And on the second Yom Tov he says, this is the second time I'm announcing. But by Regal Shlishi Omer stop. He doesn't say this is the third time I'm announcing. Why not? Lema Regal Shlishi. Why shouldn't he say Regal Shlishi? Zum ersten Mal, zum zweiten Mal, zum dritten Mal. Why doesn't he do that? The teretz is if someone listening hears wrong, he might think that the guy said Sheni and he won't rush home to check. And he might end up losing the ability to ever retrieve his Aveda. But if on the third time he doesn't say anything, that's so distinct. That's clear. Everyone will know that this is the last time he's announcing it, and it's my last opportunity to try to retrieve it. What about Sheni Nami? If you announce this is the second time I'm announcing it, that's also a problem. Why? Because someone might think that it's only the first time and not the second time. If you're telling me that people mix up these numbers, Zok to Gemara, big deal. So he'll think it's the first time. And what's going to happen? He's going to come, he's not going to worry about it now. He'll come back next time. That's not a problem. Even if he mixed up the second with the first, he still has another opportunity on the Regal Shlishi. So therefore, there's no harm done. But on the third one, which is his last chance, there we want to make sure that he won't mistake it. Tana Rabban, we learned in the Brisa, Barishayna, in the times of the base of Mikdash, where we had everybody come together, he would announce it 3 regalim, and after the last Yom Tov, he's there for another 7 days. But Rahman will explain, and we no longer gather in Yerushalayim to be Oil Regel. So where are you going to announce it? They made at the Kana. Then where do you announce the Veda that you found? In the Besmedrash. So when people have signs hung up in shul, lost and found, I found this and this and this, that's mamish this Gemara. You're supposed to hang up a sign in shul to announce something that you found. The problem was, when there were thuggery in places where Eden lived, and we'll soon see what that thuggery was. You don't make a public announcement, rather you discreetly and quietly pass around the information. And that will be it. What thuggery occurred that would impact returning a Metzia? The government made a decree that anything that's found goes to the Malchus. So we have a saying, finders keepers, losers weepers. In that Malchus, it was finders weepers, losers weepers. Everybody's a weeper, everyone's a loser. So therefore, if you would announce an Aveda, it would get seized right away by Revenue Canada. Our governments are even worse. They're the thugs seize the Vedas. Revenue Canada are thugs and they seize what's rightfully ours, even though we didn't lose it. Zok Gemara, Rabbi Ami Ashkach, Oidyo the Dinri. He found a container full of gold coins. And Chazia Abu Barnash, the commercials, there was some guy who saw him and saw he was terrified. Why was he terrified? Because he assumed this guy's going to snitch on him, and now they're going to take the Aveda away, and he won't be able to return it. So the guy said, don't worry, I'm a good guy. I'm a Shabbos guy. You can keep it, the La Parsoyana. Who are the bad name? The Persians, they're thugs. I'm not a Persian, the army of Avidas Salamak. I'm a Canadian. I'm from other nationality. And we don't believe in this thuggery, and I won't report you. Tanuraban. Evan Tayin Hayabushalayim. The best way that I can teach an Evan Tayin is literally a soapbox. There was a soapbox in Yerushalayim where everyone announced their announcements. If you lost an Aveda, you'll go there to hear an announcement. One guy gets up on the soapbox and announces the Aveda. The loser approaches that person and offers Simonim and retrieves his Aveda. And this is what Chani Hamagal was referring to when he said, after he made it rain, it was such an abundance of rain that the city was flooding. So Chani Hamagal said, see if that stone, that soapbox, is submerged. If it's submerged, that means there's so much water, then I'll daven that the rain should stop. But otherwise, Zokt Tosfos, you don't ask ever for a bracha to stop, for an abundance of bracha to stop. And Tosfos brings down from a Yerushalmi that compares to a stone. Just like a stone will never dissolve, so too you never daven to stop a bracha from occurring, even if the bracha is too much. Zokt Heilige Gemara V'Aiter. Amar Esa Aveda. Someone came along and said, I lost a shirt. So he knew that the Aveda was a shirt. That's a pretty good indication that it's his. But he was not able to offer any specific simonim on the shirt that he lost. Lo yitein lo, you're not allowed to give it to him. That's not enough verification that he's not a rabbi. V'ha what if the fellow is a known rabbi? He's known to be a crook. Even if he presents someone, he shouldn't give it to him. He might be stealing this baggage. And the Gemara is going to explain how that would work. Shenemar, the Pasuk says, don't give back to Aveda until the person comes to you and asks for it. And of course, the Gemara explains this a little bit more. How are you going to give something back if it's not claimed? Elamai, it means you should analyze the person who's making the claim to ensure that he's honest. The same machlokes we had on Amar Aleph. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Avidasa Machriz, Rabbi Nachman Omer Glima Machriz. Rabbi Yehuda says when you announce you found something, you're vague and you just say I found something, and whoever wants to claim it not only has to have a simon, but he has to know what it is. Rabbi Nachman Omer Glima Machriz. No, you can actually announce what you found, and as long as they present the simon, you give it back to them. If you say glima machris, we're afraid of a rabbi. What will a rabbi do? What a rabbi will do is he'll look around in shul and he'll analyze everybody's talus, exactly what it looked like, what type of a Torah it has, what type of stain it has, which stitches are long, which stitches are short. He'll learn a lot about it, which one is a cigarette burn, which one is a herring stain. And then if he finds out that someone lost a beged, for instance, he's in shul one day, and Shimon is asking him, "Does anybody see my talus? I can't find my talus. I don't know where I put it." So now he knows, Shimon's talus is lost. Then he'll hear somebody announce, "I found the talus." So he says, "Great, I know exactly what Shimon's talus looks like. I know it must be Shimon's talus that's lost because I heard Shimon complaining in shul that he lost his talus, and he'll go give the simon and he'll retrieve Shimon's talus illegally. So that's why you shouldn't even say what you found. How will that help? Because the Ganev is not going to make such a stretch. I don't even know what he found. So I'm going to go give him a simon on Shimon's talus. He might have found something else. So that will deter a Ramai from making a false claim. So Dr. Yehuda, the Yom Glima Machris Chashina Laram. Rav Nachman Yom Glima Machris. We're not worried about a Ramai. The Ramai like Chashina. The Imkain, if you want to be Chashish for a Ramai, then Eilu never saw it. So then even if you just announce Avedasa, he might still try a long shot and say it's the talus and give it to someone. So once you're going to be Chashish, then you'll never be able to clarify. Tanan we learned Amar Esaved, our Mishnah. Someone was able to identify. I know what you found. You found a shirt. Amar Simonel, but he was unable to give Simonim on the shirt. Hareza lo yitin the don't give it. Correct more. If you're like Rabbi Yehuda, that when someone announces something, he doesn't say what he found. He just says, "I found an Aveda." Well, then you have a good Mishnah here. Even though the person who is petitioning to get back this beged was able to identify that the found item was in fact a beged, nevertheless, the Chiddush of the Mishnah is that Kiloi Amar Simonim Loi Madrinim. If he didn't say Simonim, you won't give it back. If you hold, like Rab Nachman, that when the person announces, "I found something," he actually says, "I found a beged." So what does the Mishnah say? I said that Aveda v'lo Amar Simonim. Of course, you announced what you found. Suck to Gemara. Yom Glima Machris Amar Iu Glima. The announcer said, "I found the beged." Amar Iu Glima, and the petitioner says, "Yeah, that's what I lost." Do I need a Mishnah to tell me that that's not a good verification, that you wouldn't give it back? I don't need that chiddush. We can still learn that the person who announces he found an Aveda will announce what it is that he found. But what the Mishnah means when it said Amar Iu Glima, the Amar Iu Simonim, the Mishnah means that Avada he said a simon. It says V'lei Amar Simonel. What it means is Dr. Gemara, Umay Loi Amar Simonel means Loi Amar Simonim Mufhakinida. He gave Shvacha Simonim. He said the chveis, it's red in color. That's not a good simon. There's so many begotten that are red in color. So that's what the Mishnah means. The Mishnah doesn't mean you didn't say any simon. It means you didn't say an appropriate simon, and that's why you don't give it back. And that's the chiddush of the Mishnah, that the simon has to be a pretty good right. Zok to Gemara Vayter Vayrama, someone who's a known Ramai, Al Papish Amar Simoneh Areiz Lo Yitlai, Zok to Martoni Rabban. It used to be someone offered a simon, he got it back, but Misharabu Ramoyin, and they found ways to give the right simonim wrongfully. His kinush yoyimim, they would tell him, "Yes, you have the right simon, but that's not good enough for us. Say Edim the lav rabbi. Bring a character witness, and then v'toyel, then we'll give it." The father of Papa Irchas lechamra, he lost chamor v'ashkuchua, and they were found. Also, the kamei the Rabba bar Ahuda, they came in front of the Rabba bar Ahuda. Amalu, they asked him, "Yoditin bei the Ramayu?" I'm sorry, I skipped the line. Amalu told him, "Zil Isi Sahade, the lav Ramaya, bring a character witness that will say testimony that you're not a rabbi, you're an upstanding citizen. The toil, no one will give it to you." Also, Isi Sahade, he went and brought Adam. Amalu, they asked, the Bezdin asked the Adam, "Yoditin bei the Ramayu? Are you aware that he's a Ramai?" Amalu, they answered in yes, which would seem to mean that they're saying he is a Ramai, but they might have misunderstood his question. Amalahu, so the father of Papa told him, "What are you talking about? I'm no Ramai, no. You tell me that I'm a Ramai?" Amalahu, "No, I'm not lav Ramai at Kamina." We thought Bezdin asked us, "Can you verify that he's not a Ramai?" And that's what we answered yes to. We didn't have that they were asking us, "Is he a Ramai?" And we said yes to say you are a Ramai. Aval, that's not what we did. Now the question is there a rule? Kivan shehigid shuv einei chayzer umagid. They first said he was a Ramai. Can they be believed now to change the testimony and say that he's not a Ramai? Amar Rabba bar Rafuna, Mistavra, this is not called changing testimony. Because they meant, even originally, that he's not a Rama. And you know how I can prove it? Because Mistavra Lemaisi Inish Chayvasal Nafshi. This guy's bringing Adim. He's not going to bring Adim that are going to say that he's a Ramai. Of course, the Adim that he brought were saying that he's not a Ramai. And of course, it was just a misunderstanding, but they never meant to say that he was a Ramai. What is the responsibility from a cost perspective to be metapel with the Aveda of another person? We learned this Mishnah already. If you found an animal, and this animal eats, so it costs you money to support it, but it also produces, so at least you're not out any money, because whatever it will cost to feed it, it will produce in product and labor, then then you must hold on to the animal, you must be metapel with it, because you don't have out of pocket. But if it's something that costs you money in food, but it produces nothing, you mocher that you sell. You have to give back an Aveda, you have to protect the integrity of the Aveda. Find some way to return him his value. And if you're going to continue feeding it, that doesn't come out of your pocket, that's going to come out of the Aveda. So if you feed it for a long time, by the time the owner comes to find it, he'll have no equity left. So the pasuk is saying you need to protect his equity, his value, and the best way to do that would be to sell it, and then you have cash. What is the halacha with this money? Is it allowed to be used by the Metzia Aveda? Can he borrow it? He's allowed to use that money. So now he's a shoyel or a loiva. Therefore, if they got lost even by Einis, the shomer Aveda will be chayiv. He's not allowed to use them. So he's a regular shomer. Therefore, because he's only like a shomer chinam, or maybe a shomer sacher, but he for surely wouldn't be mechuyev on things. Zok Gemara, we said that if it's oisav oichel, then you let it do that because it's sustaining itself. Frek Gemara ula oilam, is this going to go on forever? So now I have to become this guy's personal shepherd. Amar Rab Nachman, Amar Shmuel. No, there's a limit to that. Ad Yud Beis Chodesh, only up until 12 months. Now, if you remember, we discussed this yesterday about someone who found donkeys, and it says that he held them for more than 12 months, and we said there was Lafnimi Shur Sadinavad, and Tosfos learns that it's based on this Gemara. He had a right to sell them after 12 months, but he didn't, because he did Lafnimi Shur Sadin, to return the animals as they are to the original owner. So it's 12 months. Mikan ve'elech. Tanya mehachi kol davar shayis v'aychol kol parah v'chamor v'tapel ben ad yud beis chodesh. Mikan ve'elech, after 12 months, sham demeyen umanicha. You assess their value and you sell them and you just put the money away until Eliyah comes. How about a golem musiyachim? If they're animals that eat but they don't produce, metabel ben shloisha chadashim. You still have to be busy with them for 3 months. Mikan ve'elech, after that, sham demeyen umanicha. What about a vazam and tarnagolim that do nothing for you? Because these are male roosters. They just say cock-a-doodle-doo. Maybe they wake you up in the morning, but they don't produce any eggs. Metabel b'hem shloishim yoyim. Mikan ve'elech, sham demeyen umanicha. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. Tarnagolis that produces eggs, that's already oisef. So therefore it's kibei megasa, and it's 12 months. Tanya namiyochi, tarnagolis ubei megasa, metabel b'hen, shneim osar chodesh. Mikan ve'elech, sham demein umanicha. Now let's look closely at the next case. A golem usiyachim, metabel b'hem lamed yoyim. You only keep them for 30 days. Mikan ve'elech, sham demein umanicha. The bride that we learned earlier says a golem and siyachim, you have to be metabel them for 3 months. So we have a stira. The first price is 3 months. This price is 30 days. Let's look at the next case. Anything we're taking care of them are worth more than what they produce. You only have to keep them for 3 days. Now, if you look back to the previous brisa, it said that you got to keep 30 days, not 3 days. So we have two steers. Kasha Agolim Musuyachim, Agolim Musuyachim, and Avadim V'Tana Goylim, Avazim V'Tana Goylim. So tomorrow we can favor both of these theories. Agolim Musuyachim, Agolim Musuyachim Lekasha, Hadiraya, Hadaptuma. If you have plenty of pasture land and it doesn't cost you anything to feed them, you let them wander and graze, then you got to keep him for 3 months. But if you have to buy feed and feed them, which is costing a fortune, there only keep them for 30 days. If they're big birds, they eat a lot, then you shouldn't keep them so long, you get rid of them in 3 days. But if they're small birds, at least hold on to them for 30 days. If they don't produce, Tanu Rabbanan, where do you know this from? The puzzle is you have to do your best to return whatever value possible to the person who lost it. Find the best way of salvaging the maximum value on behalf of the person who owns this Aveda. Let's say you found 6 agolim, 6 calves. Don't say, I'm only going to sell 1 calf, and I'll use the money, the proceeds of that sale, to feed the rest of the calves. Because what's going to happen? You're going to run out of money, and then you're going to have to sell another calf. And then soon you'll have nothing left. So what should you do? Sell them all immediately, and therefore you'll at least preserve his capital. Or rather liquidate right away so that you'll preserve as much value as possible on behalf of the person who lost it. So the Rebbe should give us koyach. We were zoicha to learn daf chavches, daf koyach of Meseches of Metzia. We should always zoicha to have a lot of koyach at Me'av Esrim to accomplish all of the goals that we have in life, to learn Torah, to raise families, to see them married, to see them building their own families, and Be'ez Hashem to lead them soon to greet Mashiach.
Speaking of koyach,
Yosy,
Yes.
I just want to wish you a mazel tov, and you should have a lot of nachas in your family and more simcha.
Mazel tov, Yosy. Likewise,
Thank you.
should have nachas.
Thank you so much. I truly appreciate it. And please tonight, if you remember, have a l'chaim for me.
Yes, well.
Okay. Thank you so much. All the very best.
Okay.